And so, Maya, thank you for hanging with me. And you can, by the way, you can feel free to ask me whatever you want because it's just a chat. And but what I always love to do is, well, of course, some of this will be about streaming. I always like to start just talking about, your life and other things like that. Okay. And so feel
Yeah.
free. I realize some of these things you may not share. Like, in other words,
Mm.
so because again, for you, you have to think through like is where you grew up something you talk about the city? No.
No, you know about it. I think there'll be a lot of things that come up today that you probably heard me tell you before.
No, that's
But
what I
yeah,
wanted to, that is not
yeah, they knew
something
I
you
grew up in
talk about.
California,
Okay.
though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. So we can say,
Yeah.
you grew up in California and,
Hmm.
I have a daughter that's your age, and it wouldn't have been
Yes.
unreasonable that you two would have seen each other at some point, but you
Yeah.
never did, you know.
Yeah. She's awesome. She's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, are you okay? Because I don't need to ask you any questions. Sometimes I just ask questions like, that are about when you're younger, right? No,
Hmm.
tell you a father-daughter story or stuff like that. Would you
Sure.
rather I stay away from that?
No, that's fine. I'll just tell you if I don't want to answer.
All right,
But
that's
it shouldn't be a problem. I've talked
that's
about a
good.
lot of stuff on stream. So,
That's what I figured. That's what I figured. So why don't we start with this before streaming and before all that, right?
mm,
Talk about your attach your love of animals, your engagement with animals, because obviously that started well before you started streaming. And so when did
yes.
this kind of sense of your attachment affinity to animals? How old were you when you first like started to
Man.
experience this?
I've been around. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so I've been around animals since I was a kid. I've always been super into them, more so than any of my siblings. Just loved them. Started riding horses when I was 4, and so that was probably my biggest dive into my love for animals was getting really into horses, being a horse girl, just off the bat.
Mhm.
But started growing up on a farm and then volunteered a lot of places throughout middle school, high school, therapeutic riding programs, animal shelters, anything animal related, animal therapy programs. And then in college, went off to school, really missed being around animals because I went from living on a farm my whole life to living in a dorm, and it was just no life. There was just no life around me, no dogs barking, no horses, in the morning. And so I started volunteering at a zoo, and that's how I fell in love with exotics. So got really into animals then, was doing traditional conservation education in zoos, got an internship at a zoo, then got another internship at a zoo. So conservation started there, right
Yeah.
before I started streaming, like maybe 2 years before I started streaming.
Interesting. And now, uh, were animals at all part of what you like your degree in college when you went to college, or were you just doing like finance or something like
No,
that?
I got my degree in agriculture. So I was going to do, the goal was sustainability in agriculture. So I was interested in conservation going in, but it was going to be like journalism or something, ag journalism, ag communications, PR, I don't know. Um, so kind of an animal degree. I mean, I took animal science and some other animal courses in college, but
Right.
nothing like not biology or zoology or anything like that.
Right. But you at least got some of your foundation through the college experience, right? Because like some of it was in structured. And so did you graduate from college, or did you
Mhm.
did this take and what so then what was the degree in the end?
Agricultural communications was my degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Agricultural
Um, I went
communications.
to Cal Poly on the Central Coast, California.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. I did finish. I moved to Texas before I finished my degree because it was during COVID when I was finishing. I finished in 2020. And so I
Okay. Yeah.
finished
Because you had
online.
already started streaming before you finished your degree.
Yeah, I started streaming in 2019 and I got my degree in 2020. So it was a hard push at the end. It was both I have a job right now that I'm never going to use an agriculture degree for, and COVID was happening, and so all the school was online, and there was a part of me that was like, what's the point? But I was so close to finishing. So I finished.
Right. Okay, well, since it's so natural now, and I'll weave in some of the other because part of what I like to do here is there are all these stories that make up our lives, and we relive our lives through our stories. They're stories we tell over and over and over and over again, and that's really part of who we are, and we love telling our stories. And so sometimes I'd like to find some of your stories,
Hmm.
but it's so natural to transition now into your journey where so I'll jump back to non-streaming things, but
Okay.
jump into your journey now into streaming. And what was your before you started streaming, were you like first of all, you don't were you a gamer at all before you started
No.
streaming?
No, still am
No.
not.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
never been into
So
gaming.
so how did you first find out that Twitch existed?
I met some friends online who streamed, I don't know, Apex or Destiny or something. I still don't know the difference between those two games. But I met friends online that were streamers. And I was making singing videos on Instagram at the time. So just on a normal Instagram, like a couple hundred followers, just doing like guitar singing videos. And they said that I should stream it, and I didn't know what Twitch was, or they set up OBS for me on my
Yeah.
computer and all that. And so that's how I started. Was in the music section.
Interesting. So you started,
Hmm.
and when you met them online, you met them because of course you meet online all the time in games and all that. But was it in some type of bulletin board room, or was it through Instagram or something? Like, how did you meet them online?
I was on Omegle with some of my friends. We met them on there.
Ah,
Yeah, I think they were
okay,
streaming it at the time, but
right,
they were just some guys that were gamers,
right,
and
right. You were
they,
online in Omegle, and like you met folks
yeah,
that
and then they told me what Discord was, and then I downloaded Discord, and then I started talking to them
way.
on Discord, and then it became a stream thing. So
Right,
yeah,
right. So you started out in music. That is, and this was what year was this?
2019,
Okay. And
April
I
of
because I know
2019.
you do music still, but I
Hmm.
didn't know that that was your first stream. And how
It
often?
was, yeah. I don't know when I start. Probably not often. Like maybe a couple times a week. I was streaming from a MacBook Air with a Yeti microphone on my bed in college, just doing music, and it was terrible. The audio quality was terrible, and I'm not sure that it was watchable. But yeah, it started in the music section. It ended up being naturally kind of a just chatting thing, right? Because you start talking to the people that are
Mhm.
there. And I told them that I was a falconer, because I was a falconer at the time,
Yeah,
rehabilitating a
yeah.
red-tailed hawk, and they all wanted to see the bird, right? So then one stream I brought him on stream to show them, and that's the first clip that went viral on Reddit, and then it
Ah, I
spiraled from there.
yeah, I knew there was a clip. I didn't realize it was a Twitch clip that went viral, that it wasn't an Instagram or any of that. It was a
No,
Twitch clip that went
it was
viral.
the first time I brought that bird out on stream. Yeah, someone clipped it, put it on Reddit.
And
It's
so
crazy.
before that went viral, like what was your ACCV? What roughly for folks here? Like,
I think that it was. This is a huge discrepancy. I don't remember if it was 20 or 200
okay,
when I brought Bean out on stream for the first time.
right. My
I feel
betting,
like it was
I
probably
was,
20, and then
yeah,
after
that's what
Reddit
I
it was
was
like
thinking.
200.
I was
Yeah,
betting that it like, because just when you start, I mean, really, actually, 200 is really
a
high.
lot.
Is a
Yeah.
music streamer that is, music streamer at 200 is funding their life through Twitch. So I would expect that it was 20 because a music streamer to get to 200 is actually quite hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it may have been 200 after that
Yeah,
clip went to Reddit, and I
yeah,
started growing from there.
yeah, yeah. And then it just kept going. And then were you still when did you move away? Like, didn't you? Because now music is something you still do, but
Hmm.
it's sort of add on. It's another thing. Oh, before I get to that, do you play an instrument?
Not really. I mean, I have a guitar, and I've had a keyboard in the past, but it's all very simple. I
Look,
don't think I'm a musician by any
no, no,
means.
no. But when you sing,
Hmm.
okay, you self accompany. You don't use
Not
background. You're not
now.
doing
I
no,
used to. Now I use YouTube
you use
instrumentals.
karaoke. Right, right,
Hmm.
right. Right. You
Yeah, I
use
haven't played the guitar in a while.
but back then you played guitar.
Yeah, I did.
Hmm.
I did.
Hmm.
It was
But you
fun.
stopped.
Yeah, it's just easier not to. It's easier not to. It's a lot of practice. It's hard too with audio.
Yeah.
It's much easier for it to come through the computer, and so I just got lazy. I haven't played guitar in a
Yeah.
long time. You play guitar, don't you?
I play piano. I play
Piano.
piano. My daughter
Very
plays
cool.
guitar, and but I'm kind of like you. So I taught myself piano in high school,
Uh huh.
and I taught myself piano by basically playing chords. Okay, now I
Okay.
know how to read music, and I can kind of, I can play with my right hand and read music. But really, what I do is I play chords, and in the bass, I do an octave like G, and I'm actually very good at playing chords. And then I just like improvise,
Hmm.
right? And so that
That's
way, like,
cool. I don't know how to improvise.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
neat.
The secret was learning to play by chords as opposed to by trying to read everything. Because once you get your left hand where you're just playing an octave, it's not that hard, but you have to be able to look at a chord and know right away what is a C sharp,
Right.
and just know
Are you
exactly
gonna
what.
be at Cutie's concert?
I am. I am.
Are you? Oh, how fun! Are you playing the piano?
I am playing the piano.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I wish
Is
I could
it?
be there. I'm really
Oh,
excited to
you're
watch.
not
It's gonna
going
be
to be
very
there.
cool. I will
Oh,
not be there, but I will be watching.
okay. I was going to ask if you were going to be there and if JT was going to be playing for you because JT Brown is playing for like everybody.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
But no, I won't be there.
Yeah.
It's a very cozy one though. I think you'll love it. It's a really
Yeah.
great event.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. I'm flying down.
Cool.
Originally, she had thought it was going to be last weekend, and I was already down there for the dodgeball thing, and it was
Oh
working out
no.
perfect, right?
Yeah.
And then she didn't find she found the place for this weekend, but I'm going to go back down
That's so
and do
cool.
some other stuff.
That's very
Yeah,
nice of you.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, I really it's interesting. I've realized this that when I was down there, um, one of the things that I know other folks have said. Um, uh, about being a CEO is that in the organizational structure of the company, there's a certain degree of isolation because
Hmm.
you're friends with everyone, but there's this clear status difference, right? Because
Hmm.
you're the CEO. So whenever they're interacting with you, they're interacting with the CEO, right?
Right.
And the interesting thing when I interact with streamers, they think it's cool that I'm the CEO, but then they forget that like that isn't really a foundation because especially with the bigger streamers, the bigger streamers are big streamers. Right. So yeah, I'm the
Hmm.
CEO of Twitch, but they're a big streamer, right? So the fact that I'm CEO, they joke, they say, "Oh, you're my boss," but they don't really think I'm their boss. Right. And so
That's
it's
interesting. Yeah.
right, it's just a joke. And so it's very it's fun, right? I really enjoy it. And they,
Hmm.
I enjoy hanging out with them and joking with them. The dodgeball tournament was just fun. And
Yeah.
and I like my like it's funny because I've always hung out with folks oftentimes that are younger. Like I'll hang out with my kids and their friends
Hmm.
and we'll just like we'll do stuff together. We'll go frisbee golf, and their friends always like, "Well, yeah, your dad just hangs with us," right? Which they're not
Hmm.
used to, right? They're used
I
to
love
dads
that.
being dads.
You're the cool dad.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
The cool
so
CEO.
let's see. We got to okay, so we got to the falconry and that
Mm.
taking off. But so now let's go to how then your content evolved because it then started because let's see so you were in Austin at this time, right? Like basically you
Yes.
moved to Austin fairly early
Yes.
in this
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah. The next year, or maybe even within a year of when I started streaming, I moved here. Um, so yeah, it started with just chatting. I think I did have a realization pretty early on, especially with that first clip going viral, that the work that I was doing, I had a job at a zoo at that time when I was streaming and was a falconer. And I was doing traditional education, so bringing animals to birthday parties and events and libraries and classrooms and stuff and teaching kids about animals. And when I brought that bird out and that clip went viral, I was kind of doing the same thing, the same spiel of like, this is Bean. He's a red-tailed hawk. They're native to,
Hmm.
whatever. Um, and so I had a realization pretty early on that I could do the same model, but do it online, where I'm not having to bring animals somewhere and I'm teaching way more people, and there's a much greater reach for
Yep.
who I can teach and where. And so I did a ton of just chatting in my first few years of streaming, and I had a conservation podcast. Before Conservation Cast, I would have biologists and ecologists come on, and we'd talk about their research. And then in 2020 or so, I came up with the idea for Alveus as a nonprofit and just do the same, have a sanctuary, have the animals, but do all of the educational programming virtually, and
Yep.
then founded in 2021. So it was like
Yep.
a snowball. It all happened very, very quickly, but a lot of just chatting scattered within there for sure.
So one of the things that I've written about a few times, the company I talk about a lot, is how so much of we have these stories that we tell ourselves about our who we are, and we put ourselves in boxes and we limit ourselves in terms of what we
Mm-hmm.
can do, right? And you think, oh well, I can't do that. That's like and I think I'm actually reading this book by Adam Grant called Hidden Potential. Which, are you
Mm-hmm.
familiar with Adam Grant?
No.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I love he wrote this one book, Think Again, but he's
Mm-hmm.
basically a social psychologist. But this book, which is a really good book, talks about the potential that's so often within each of us that we often don't realize,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that there is a lot, and that often we are the ones that limit ourselves, right? And so the interesting thing about what you've done, right, is, some might say, I know so my son recently just opened a cafe and he's 21, and he was a coffee shop, and he was a little apprehensive, right? Well, can I handle all this? And I kind of said, I said, Dylan, if Mark Zuckerberg could found Facebook at 20, I think you can
Mm-hmm.
open a cafe, right?
Yeah.
And he's learned so much by doing it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that he doesn't learn in school, right? So talk about that kind of your image of yourself, and as you were founding Alveus, because there's this, can I dream this big? But of course you're 21 or 22 at the time, and of
Yeah.
course the world tells you, no, you shouldn't dream that big, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
22, you need to go play your role,
Yeah.
and talk about that and how you handled that and how you think about that.
Yeah. I think I'm 25 now. I was 21 when I founded.
Right.
I think at when I was 21, I actually think I had very few doubts. I think I was really confident. I was like, yeah, I'll just make a nonprofit, as if I knew how to do that, right? I'll just
Right.
I'll just have a board of directors like I've ever led one before. I'll just buy this property, which I've never done before. I'll just do a little whatever. But it all I just kind of went through the motions, and looking back at it, kind of a mess. Looking back at it, I have no idea how I did that, because if I were to think about founding a nonprofit right now, I think I'd be really intimidated, probably because I know the process now. But there was a lot of ignorance when I was 21 about what would go into it and what it would mean and the work that it would make for myself. But because of that, I wasn't afraid of doing it. So I guess
Right.
that's good.
No, it is.
So yeah, so I never really thought about it. I also was so privileged to be able to do it. I think I had a really supportive community on Twitch. I was making a lot of money because of Twitch that I wasn't expecting to be making as a 21-year-old, of course, at all. And that was the only reason that I was able to do that. And
Mhm.
also, with the support of my family and my parents and other conservation professionals that I had met through that podcast that I did, that I could talk to and get advice from. So I was very lucky to be able to do that. I had a lot of help along the way, but looking back, it's crazy. Like I
Yeah,
was
I think you
super
highlight
crazy.
one of the things that I think is important, which is there's both this envisioning of what you can do, but then there's also the doubts and the naysayers, right? Oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that, right? It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
wait, what do you mean? And you didn't have those things going off in your head telling you, what? You're going to do
Mm-hmm.
what? right? You can't, and it's now you know all sorts of things that yeah, you could have done it better, but you just figure it out,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It made it much easier. I actually don't really recall people saying that I shouldn't, or saying that it was crazy, or saying that I should wait, or whatever. When, when I talked to my community about it, they were just excited. They thought it was super
Yeah.
cool. And everyone was like, yeah, do it. Maybe none of us knew how much work it
No, I
was.
think that I
So,
I think that's an interesting thing about Twitch and also the streamer community, right? Because like to become a successful streamer, you almost have to like let go of this, oh, I can't do it.
hmm,
Right? You almost have to like because it just happens, right? Like what successful streamer, had this plan 2 years before they became a big streamer where they knew they were going to become a big streamer and they knew exactly how. It's
right.
not like going to medical school, right? Going to medical school, I'm going to be a doctor. Well, here's the algorithm of what I need to do. I need to get good
Hmm.
grades in college. I need to take the GMAT, and there's a
Hmm.
plan. And if you're a successful streamer, it just happens, right?
Yeah, it does. And it happens very fast. And you have
Right.
to be very lucky,
Hmm.
um, and very young, and not risk averse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing you don't that's the thing that I found. Like I had that model too. You have to be young. You don't have to be young. It's the
That's
interesting
true.
thing.
I guess all the streamers that I've been around are my age or slightly
Yes.
younger. But yeah, you're right. There's a ton
Yeah.
of
I,
people on Twitch.
I've talked, and I'm blanking on her name. It's just call me Lexi. It's something like that. And it
Mhm.
stuck out because when I was on my East Coast tour, there's this one woman I met that is a 55-year-old a trans woman who transitioned about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And she had raised a family of 5 kids as a man, and she transitioned, and she now has a wife and she now funds her life through Twitch. And she started she also used TikTok, but she does a talk show. She doesn't game at all, and she thinks most of her audience are middle-aged women,
Yeah. Cool.
interestingly. And
That's
she started it what 3 years ago, right? At
Mhm.
52. And
Yeah.
I won't say how much she makes a year. I asked her, and it's not like she just scrapes by. It's a reasonable living that she
Mhm.
just like started and is so. And that's the one thing that I've enjoyed about roaming around is since on Twitch you don't look at hundreds of creators. It's just not the way Twitch is built, where in a week you're going to see hundreds of creators, right?
Mhm.
Because Twitch is built where, you see a small number of creators. And when I meet them, I'm just flabbergasted by the number of people that are funding their life and, all walks and ages and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
What's cool about Twitch is that, I mean, there's certainly a learning curve with the tech, right? I
yeah,
don't know that I could go to my mom and say, "You should go live and do this," and she
yeah,
could do it, right? So there's a learning curve for sure, but once you're on there, you can do whatever you want,
yeah.
whatever you're passionate about, and that's a really cool for people to be able to do. I think there's a ton of access to be able to do a bunch of different stuff. Also, I think as a young person, I'm reminded of that all the time. When you're young and bad things happen, or a chapter closes, or a door closes, you're like, "Oh, this is the end," or there's never a chance for me to rebuild. I mean, people are married for a decade more, and
Yes.
start a brand new life. So there's certainly plenty of time.
I think that model and that is the reality of streaming. The reality of streaming at some level, you have to be comfortable and get comfortable with the impermanence of life.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, being on a social media platform at all, right,
Hmm.
is not to Facebook's great, but Facebook used to be the rage, right, for everybody, and now look at Facebook and it's so different. And then it's scary to have everything based off of a social media platform because the
Right,
internet moves fast. Yeah.
right. And you have to have this faith In fact, I think there probably is almost this thing of those that you have to have this faith and comfortable with yourself that you will find a way
Mhm.
and that you will make it through life because so much of a traditional path is to try and eliminate the uncertainty.
Mhm.
If I go to college and then I get a law degree, now I know I can get a job as a lawyer. Now I may
Right.
hate being a lawyer, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. I will hate my job for 10 years because eventually I will be secure and I will know and there are people that are drawn to that. And when you're
Mhm.
drawn to this, you almost have to have this ability that so often the parents can't grapple with because, you finish your degree and then, you say, okay, great. Now I'm going to make my living streaming. And it's like, what? Huh? So
Mhm.
talk about that. Talk about, and it may have been that were your parents like, when you started doing this and when you graduated and you were going to do this, were they like, huh? What are you talking about?
Yeah, for me, again, super lucky because it was such a fast-moving snowball. So, I started it was never something where I wanted to leave a good job because I thought that I was climbing up the ladder in
Yeah,
streaming and I wanted to make it that way. So they never really had to be scared about that. It was all of a sudden there were thousands of people watching me and I was making a whole income,
right. It
right?
worked. It
And
worked
so
that you before you graduated, you already had gained traction.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they were always super supportive of it. Very confused at the beginning. I one of the first times I had streamed from their house once because I was visiting home when I was in college, and, um, I went out into the kitchen the next morning and I said something like, "I made $600 last night." And they were like, "Doing what?" And I was like, "Streaming." And they were like, "What were you doing?"
right,
Because I don't and I told them I was just playing music, just singing, and, I had a crazy I don't think hype trains were a thing at the time, but just, like, a crazy amount of donations and bits and subs, and so from the start, it was wild, but and so it was really easy, I think, for them to get behind it.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So now let's get to actually no. Now we're going to, given that we jumped to your parents. Now I'll jump back. Okay. So, and sometimes people ask questions and good answers don't pop into your head, and then you come up with oh, I don't have a good answer. Feel free to say a good answer doesn't pop into my head, right? If a good
Okay.
answer doesn't pop into your head. So,
Okay.
let's talk about like a father-daughter story that you remember. Is there any story that you often tell, right? About you and your dad doing something, going on an adventure or something silly he did, or because we always have these stories.
Yeah. Um, I think the one thing that I remember most about my dad when I was a kid was that he coached my sports teams. He
Hmm.
loved soccer, and so he was always an assistant coach for my sister, and he coached my AYSO teams, like my kids' soccer
Yep.
teams. And so it was always really, really cool to have my dad around. I don't know if this is like an interesting story, but one that pops up is one of my first I hope it was one of my first soccer games. I don't know though, honestly. He told me to play center mid, and I didn't know what that meant, obviously, because I was a child. And he said, you're in the middle of the field, like you're playing in the middle of the field, like with your teammates. And so I went and I stood on the middle, like the in the middle of the circle in the middle of the field, and I did not move because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. And I remember other parents being upset, and I remember my team being very confused and upset, but I remember my dad not being upset at all, which was
Right.
very nice. He was very good about explaining to me what happened, and so he's always been really patient.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite things about my dad. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's that.
I spent, in fact, one of the, like, I spent how many years of my life? I guess from when my daughter was 7 to when my son probably was 12. So it's probably 8 or 9 years where I was coaching one
Oh
of them
yeah,
or both of them in something.
cool.
Yes,
That's awesome.
I coached basketball, I coached baseball, I coached football, I coached soccer once. I was not a good
Oh my
soccer
gosh.
player. It was mostly basketball and baseball.
Yeah.
And I play a lot of basketball, and I was always like, so I coached my daughter and then coached my son. Um, but baseball, when initially because I wasn't much of a baseball player growing up, or a baseball player at all. So I thought, oh well, I'm not going to coach baseball. And that was my attitude with soccer too, because I'm not a soccer player. And then
Hmm.
my son played the first year t-ball, and I went and watched, and just a regular parent. And then I realized, next year I'll be an assistant coach. And so I was an assistant coach. And I realized even though I didn't know much about baseball, I actually was really good at coaching them,
Hmm.
right? Because I was good at getting enthusiastic. And then I said, I'll just head coach. And I had more fun coaching baseball because I think I got better than I was at basketball because I really worked at it. I like watched all these YouTube videos. I had to learn all this stuff about baseball. And that was
Yeah.
also the thing he loved the most. Like,
Hmm.
he played, and where he, played travel ball and played on the Stanford team. And then we went to Cooperstown on a trip.
Hmm.
Did you do any traveling when you were playing soccer?
No, my sister did a lot though. My sister was
Yeah.
very competitive. I never was.
Yeah. Soccer, being competitive at soccer is crazy.
It's a whole world out there.
It's a whole
Yeah.
world. Right. I'm
Yeah.
much worse than baseball or basketball because you're playing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been in the baseball world at all. I don't know that I've ever watched a baseball game
Yeah.
ever.
After.
But yeah, I don't think that I have.
Well, it's
But my favorite coaches growing up were always the fun ones and the ones who just wanted to have fun and
right.
be there and have a good time. I always liked those over the ones that were really technical and hard on us. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's so easy. That's why in many ways, like I'd have an assistant coach that would know baseball, but
Hmm.
knowing something was almost like a weakness.
Hmm.
Right? Because it then your like knowledge, like then your knowledge of the sport and wanting them to do the right thing because you're trying to imbue this knowledge you have to them, right?
Hmm.
Because you think your job as a coach is teaching them baseball, and of course your job as a coach isn't teaching them baseball. Not playing baseball, none of them are going to become, you know, pro players. They're
Right.
playing
They just want to have
baseball
fun.
to have fun and to
Uh-huh.
get good at social interactions and to deal with we do, and that's really what you're teaching them. But you think you're teaching them baseball.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I didn't know that you coached.
yeah, yeah. All right, so let's get back to Alveus.
Okay.
So now share with everyone your where Alveus is, right? In
Hmm.
terms of describe Alveus,
Hmm.
and talk to me about and just talk some about your vision for Alveus.
Sure. So Alveus is a 501c3 nonprofit animal sanctuary. We rescue non-releasable animals here and then curate educational programming around them. So we have parrots and crows and foxes and monkeys and reptiles and insects and rats and chinchillas and donkeys and a bunch of different species here. And then we do all of our conservation education online for them. So right now we're on 15 acres. We have 3 animal care staff. And we, I think my vision for Alveus is very simply put, is just to teach as many people as possible. So that means growing on all of Alveus' social platforms, and it means rescuing more animals so I can do more programming. It means hiring more people to take care of those animals and hiring more people to do education alongside me, because their role at the animals' roles at Alveus is to be an ambassador, to be an educational ambassador for their wild counterpart. So the more that we have, the more people we can get to fall in love with that species and then care about their wild counterpart. And that's the whole goal, just to
Now
get
talk.
people to fall
Yeah.
in love with the natural world.
Talk some about of course part of what you do is physical on the property. Part of what you
Uh-huh.
do is um, virtual, and your virtual you have what you do on Twitch, but I assume you do other virtual channels as well besides Twitch.
Yep.
So talk about in terms of as you see it, growing and the impact, how much of it is physical in terms of trying to get more people from the local area
Hmm.
versus more the virtual aspect of the
So we don't do anything in person. which makes it really easy for us and really easy for our animals. So we never take any of our animals off site. We're not open to the public, so nobody comes into Alveus. So it is all online,
All
like all
virtual.
of
So
our social platforms.
you don't have local schools come or anything
No,
like that. Okay.
no, we don't.
Hmm.
And it's a really people ask me about that, and I do miss teaching kids sometimes, but for us, it's such a wonderful model for the animals to never have to leave or have public come through. You know, they really just get to hang out in their enclosures and be relaxed and not have to deal with a bunch of stimuli all the time and new things and scary things. Um, they're teaching thousands of people, and all they have to be comfortable with is a DSLR, you know, a
Living their
camera,
life in
and
the environment they're comfortable with.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
IRL backpack.
Oh,
And they're teaching a ton of people, so it's a really cool model for them. And so I'm really happy just doing it all online.
okay. So now
Yeah.
in terms of virtual, how
Mhm.
often is the virtual, there's a component of the virtual which is Twitch, but talk about what other virtual engagements you do.
Alveus has all of the huge. Alveus has Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and then I have all of those things as well. And so I put out a lot of content on my Twitch channel that is educational with Alveus at Alveus. So me taking care of the animals, me doing presentations on the animals, and then on my YouTube channel, same thing. I'll do YouTube videos that are
But you don't
educational.
do any targeted engagements using other, like in other words, you don't virtually have classrooms visit or virtually have all of your virtual engagement is through these public social media platforms.
Yeah, I've done a handful of programs for classrooms, but it's not part of the service that we offer normally. But I've
Hmm.
done a few. Yeah.
So, well, talk to me especially about kids, right? Because,
Hmm.
as you talk about impacting people, right?
Hmm.
On Twitch, you can have a huge impact off, and people are older as they have an impact on Twitch, right?
Hmm.
Of course, some are, you know, teenagers, right, and some are older, and so talk about, kids at all, and do you, like on your YouTube channel, does that end up reaching more younger kids or not?
I think my audience all around is about the same as what it is on, so it would be
Okay,
18 to 35 or so.
right.
I think that conservation education is so important for kids. I think that kids learning from an early age to love animals is super important. But I also think that in traditional conservation education, zoos are either reaching kids primarily or reaching adults that are already interested in conservation, you know, birders or biologists
Sure.
or people that are already interested in it, or parents that are taking their kids to the zoo, right? I think there's a huge chunk missing in the middle. And I think that's exactly what the demographic on Twitch is. And I think they're so important because they're budding consumers, right?
Hmm.
And they're learning how to live on their own and what their life is going to look like, and I can jump in at that point and tell them what the best choices are to make, you know, as a consumer for the environment, and carry on, you know, a love for nature that they may have or may not have developed as a kid. So I
Right.
have a really unique access to a demographic that most conservationists do not have
Yeah,
access to.
and it is fair to say that while um, uh, exposing kids to the natural world is a hugely important task and one where we
Hmm.
still have a long, long way to go,
Yeah.
because so much of it is, in fact, that's a good topic to talk about. Let's talk about that. The programs now about exposing kids to the natural world. I'll share
Hmm.
my thoughts, which is it certainly happens in school, but it's almost like this, you know, thing on the side, right? It's like
Hmm.
this, oh, you go and do this, and now let's get back to what we're really here for, which
Right.
is math and science and social studies and all that, right? And
Yeah.
which interestingly leads to some of what I think you realize as people that are older that sometimes the education connects, but
Hmm.
more often than not they end up being 18 to 35 and they remember that they went to some
Yeah.
thing in
It's like,
elementary
yeah, I saw an
school.
owl once.
Right. I saw an owl when I was in seventh grade and we did
Uh-huh.
this. In
Yeah.
fact, I would contend that the way it happens today actually isn't having anywhere close to the impact. And in fact, that's exactly why there's such a niche that you're serving.
Mhm. I think that's a really good point. I've never really thought about it. I think I grew up around animals, so it's always been a large part of my brain to be thinking about what animals are around me and what nature looks like around me because I was raised that way. And I know that your kids were raised that way as
Mm.
well. Um, I've never really thought about like what it would be like to not have that around me.
Right.
But I would imagine that's a huge part of our problem in the conservation world anyway. Is
Yeah.
I say this quote a lot, or I have this quote on like all my socials and websites is that we'll only conserve what we love and we only love what we understand and we only understand what we're taught. Right. And
Mhm.
so if it doesn't start with the teaching, then no one's ever going to or underserve them.
I will say I will change everything you said with one word. We only love the things we experience.
That's true. That's true too. Yeah.
Right? Because taught, part of it is there's this idea that the whole taught idea is the concept of taught is I have information that I need
Hmm.
to imbue upon you. That's what teaching is sometimes.
Hmm.
And in fact, so often is learning isn't just through teaching, learning is through the act, and it is
Yeah.
through experiencing that we naturally learn.
Yeah.
And so often you need to truly experience as opposed to just being taught it.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's actually one of the reasons that I switched from doing a conservation podcast to having an animal sanctuary nonprofit. Is doing the conservation podcast, I would speak with a biologist for an hour, and I think that it was really dense for Twitch, and a lot for them to take in, and they were just being told things, you know? And I think that having an animal sanctuary and having an animal that has a name and has favorite foods and has favorite things to do, and they feel like they know that personality of that animal gives them a way greater connection to them. It's still not the same as experiencing them in person, but it's much more of an experience, I think,
But
than
actually,
just
I
learning
would
that.
say it's not the same as experiencing in person, but in fact, they are the nature of Twitch and live streaming
Mhm.
is you are experiencing whatever is live at the time, right? Because if you're teaching,
Mhm.
well, if it's just teaching, well, give me a a booklet with all the information, and I'll go read it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, what you're doing is you're entertaining them, and they are experiencing the animal, and in that they happen to learn.
Yep.
But it's actually not this sort of hierarchical teaching.
Yeah. And they do know them pretty well. I mean, the other thing about them having Alveus has 24/7 live cams on the animals, right? So there are
Right.
people that watch them all day. They know
Mhm.
what their favorite treats are. They know how they'll react to certain things. They know what they're afraid of, and I think they have way more of a connection to that animal than you would if you just visited a zoo for a day, and saw a polar
Yes.
bear or something. Like they really know these animals and that connection matters.
Yeah. I often talk about how um, friendships and relationships and community all
Mhm.
occur slowly over time.
Mhm.
All of our the friends that matter to us in our life, it all started by a series of light, shallow interactions.
Mhm.
And then over time, light, shallow interactions eventually become a deep, meaningful relationship and friendship that we think, oh, how could I not be with this person? Um,
Mhm.
and that repetition matters. And in fact, that's
Yeah.
what live streaming and community does
Mhm.
because it's all about lots of light, casual engagements that happen like consistently because people show up and then it's this and then it's that and then it's this and then it's that and then
Mhm.
eventually you've changed your emotional bonding.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way to put it. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think from an education standpoint, because that connection to those animals matters so much, that repetition matters a ton. How often they see it, or even better, if they saw it as a baby and they've watched it grow up, right? And they've had so much time with that animal. Um, yeah, they'll just care about them a ton.
Yeah.
That's a very cool way to think about it.
Yeah, one of the things. It's one of the things that I think about, especially as we start talking about teens, and I'll be curious about your experience with this. And of course, we're sitting here using it's a social media platform, but it's very different than the other social media platforms, and it's not really the same at all. Um, and although I do always scratch my head and think about how it applies, I there's this guy Jonathan Haidt who
Mm-hmm.
is an author who's written a bunch on a range of topics. But one of the topics, and I was just reading one of his blog posts on this. Um, he talks a lot about, and in fact, he has a new book that's coming out soon called, like, I think, The Anxious Generation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the data in terms of the prevalence of anxiety and depression, but also fulfillment in life with teens,
Mm-hmm.
he goes through all this data, and you see this graph of it moving and noisy. And then in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's a slide going down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Starting clearly in 2010, very pronounced. You can see these graphs
Wow.
that it just jumps out at you in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay. And his point, and he has this one blog post he had shared where he goes through 13 other reasons that people have given for this that are just wrong and why they're wrong. And his
Mm-hmm.
point is this is, because of prevalence of mobile phones and social media.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's much more, the drop also is more pronounced in girls, women than men. That in fact, you see
Absolutely.
this slide down in men, but you see a much more pronounced slide down for women. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting. We on Twitch, obviously, one of the topics that everyone loves to talk about is, the hot tub category. And we just made an update to the sexual content, and people go on and on about kids and the negative impact on kids. And I do think very much about, all those issues. But those same people don't realize that if you want to talk about negative impact on kids, um, the impact of body image that you have from social media and swiping on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, and it's not about whether or not they're scantily clad or not, right? It's just about, that is like the data is very clear. And
Yeah.
I think a big part of this is that one of the things they point out is because, the people, they'll say they spend 5 hours in social media. And the thing that goes along with this is they're spending less time face to face interacting with their
Mm-hmm.
friends, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so
I think
talk,
the other thing. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say. I think in maybe not having as many face-to-face interactions but having so many virtual interactions is you really get to choose and curate how you present yourself to other people, and I think that can be really dangerous too, especially when you think about things like filters and cutting videos and curating videos and retaking videos, and making sure that you look exactly like you want someone to see you. I think makes it really hard to then go out in reality and do it all live, for lack of
Right.
better better word there. Is that makes it really scary. I think you can really build up an image for yourself. I really really feel for young people that are growing up on social media and with social media right now. I got a Facebook when I was probably like 12 or something, which is still young, but I didn't have TikTok and Instagram and and Twitter and all those things to look at when I was in elementary school.
When did you get
When I was
your first smartphone? Do you remember that?
smartphone would have been in like maybe my sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
I had a flip phone up until then,
Yeah.
which is also just such a huge difference. having,
Yeah.
having
No,
a
no,
flip
no. I
phone and
think
a smartphone is
I,
yeah.
one of the things that I tell parents that I know with younger kids is I say, um, and it's going to be very hard. And I didn't do this as I did this mostly, but not quite. But I lucked out
Hmm.
for other reasons. Is you need a hard, fast rule that your kids just know is a non-negotiable rule, which is you cannot have a smartphone until at least high school, if not sophomore year of high school, right?
Yeah.
And that you can have a flip phone,
Yeah.
but in our family we do not have smartphones So you cannot be on Instagram and social media and sharing photos. You can text,
Mhm.
but that's it.
Yeah. I think, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, a lot of kids are getting smartphones very, very early on.
Hmm.
Um, I agree with being able to text. I think the reason I got my first phone is because I was going to like a science camp or something, and
Yeah.
my parents wanted to be able to reach me. And I
And all
definitely
your
misused
friends,
that.
it's one thing to be left out of it because your friends will use text to get together.
Right.
Right? And it's
Yeah.
and then there is this, you feel excluded because they can't contact you to get together, and they say, well, just call your mother and ask them. It's like, well, they're not going to call your mother and ask them. And
Right.
so I always felt like having the ability to text, but you don't need anything else.
I remembered. I There's also something. Admittedly, I obviously it's my job. I spend a lot of time on social media, and I'm 25, so my brain is like just finishing to develop. Maybe obviously not finishing, but
Yes. Your frontal
it
lobes
does
are, no,
something.
at
My
25,
frontal lobe.
your frontal
Yeah.
lobes are fully developed, which is one thing
Mhm.
I'll throw out to other folks that people think, oh, marijuana's fine. No, marijuana is bad
Mhm.
until you are about it is this idea that it's not a big deal. Marijuana affects your development of your frontal lobes till you're about 25. So you're
Yeah.
kind of right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I this is very personal anecdotal evidence, but I feel like in the past couple years that I've used TikTok, it has really affected my attention span. And I don't know if that's just me using TikTok or me using Twitch. And just like the amount of stimuli that is thrown in my face all the time, I need it now. I mean, I have a really hard time in silence, and I try to. I
Yes.
try to make an effort to be better about that and to sit and not have anything going on, but it's become really hard for me. And I think that if you had a smartphone and you were like 10 years old and you were scrolling TikTok for hours a day, I cannot imagine being an adult,
Right.
and having an effect or having those effects for years, especially on such a young brain. So I agree with you on that one. I really do.
Yeah. If you're watching a movie or a TV show, this idea that you have to have your phone in your hand at the same time,
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's it's indeed so.
because it isn't interesting enough,
Yeah.
without having your phone in your hand. Yeah.
There's been a couple events. I don't know if Cutie's done this, or maybe Hassan has done this. Hassan's TikToks, maybe his editor will put Hassan talking. I think it's Hassan. I don't know. Hassan talking with like Subway Surfer above it, right? Which is just a video game that you like watch
Hmm.
someone weave through stuff, and
Yeah.
it helps so much with the retention because people need multiple things to look at to focus on. It's like people will put Subway Surfer. It's kind of a joke, but it's not that they'll put Subway
No.
Surfer
I,
on their stream so people can pay attention.
yeah. Actually, I have this belief that Twitch's rise is hand in hand with short form social media, and Twitch would not have rised without that. Because in
Hmm.
fact, Twitch is the epitome of something that you can multitask while you're watching.
Yeah, that's true.
Even more so than a narrative TV show. In other words, if you're sitting there flipping through your phone on a narrative TV show, then Lord knows you can flip and through your phone when you're watching, somebody stream. And
Yeah.
so Twitch is all about multitasking, okay? Because the content, you know, isn't always worth 100% attention. And if it was, then how the heck could someone sit there for 6 hours? Because the reality is they have to eat, they have to do other parts of their life. But there'll be people
Right.
who will spend 30 hours a week watching Twitch.
Hmm.
So, and so it is completely built on this concept that you're going to have a phone. And I think this is one reason also why people are talking about Twitch on a phone. And I'm like, Twitch is a multitasking app, and the device you want to multitask on is your phone.
Yep.
And so you may watch for a little while Twitch on your phone, but trying to hold your phone and watch someone for 30 minutes when this device is saying, swipe me, do this,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Then eventually you just, you know, go and swipe the notification, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you're
Yeah.
watching a Twitch stream, you can do that at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I always say I love Alveus as a second monitor stream, but that's all streams for me. I can't really remember the last time I don't know the last time I watched a stream like full screen to watch
Yeah,
that stream. Maybe Cutie, some of Cutie's events I do watch that way,
yeah.
but most streams, no.
No, in fact, who was? Oh, it was the CEO of Discord who I
Uh
was
huh.
talking with, and he said he's not really a big Twitch user.
Hmm.
And he said he thinks that's because he does not like background visual and auditory visual stimulus. He says if
Interesting.
he's doing something, he does like music in the background. For example,
Hmm.
his wife will put on, he would go through the shows his wife would put on from TV shows. And he says he
Hmm.
doesn't do that. If he's doing the dishes, he does not like visual stimulus when he's doing something else. He just doesn't. And he only uses auditory stimulus and it's always music. Right.
Yeah.
And for him, he said, it just doesn't work for me because I do not like having visual background stimulus.
Hmm. I do. It's
Yeah.
always a show for me, or yeah,
Right.
or the Alveus stream or something. But I always have something going on. I
Yeah.
kind of wish I wasn't like that, but
His
yeah.
point was there is something about different people.
Hmm.
And when you find those gamers that these two people look the same in terms of their gaming engagement, their desire for connection, everything. And one of them uses Twitch all the other time, and the other one's like, "Yeah, I tried Twitch. I don't really enjoy it. I don't like it. What's the difference?" His conjecture was one of the differences is one of them is comfortable with visual background stimulus, and the other one isn't.
Interesting.
And that's just the
Yeah.
way they are, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Um,
Huh.
but anyway, going back to the big thing, I think this issue of uh, you know, experiencing nature, right?
Mhm.
Experiencing the physical world that we live in, and feeling a connection to
Mhm.
that is, when you, especially, it's interesting as you think of that. I think that I do think your point is right between 18 and 35. Um, it would be interesting as you start looking at 13, 14, 15, because of
Mhm.
course Twitch does work for 13, 14, 15, right?
Yep.
Um, and whether or not there's anything to sort of get, because I think those in particular, you know, they need that, that's a group that really, could use exposure. I have an
Yeah.
idea. I have an
Mm.
idea for you. This may be a horrible idea. In fact, one thing I often say is most ideas are bad.
Okay.
Okay. And that includes with most of my ideas. And the
Okay.
challenge is how to get rid of your bad ideas to
Mhm.
keep your good ideas. But this might
Okay.
be a good idea. What does it mean for Alveus to engage in Roblox?
Roblox. Um, I don't know what that is. I know that it's like Minecraft, and I know that I am playing it soon.
So let me describe what Roblox is. I'll be able to describe
Okay.
Roblox in a way that you'll get, okay? Because in
Okay.
fact, Roblox isn't big on Twitch in general.
Yeah.
Um, the difference why it's not completely like Minecraft is because Roblox is a virtual world where kids
Uh-huh.
hang out with their friends. And then
Yeah.
they roam around that world and they may play games. Okay. So in
Okay.
fact, Roblox is
So it's
also
like
a
Club Penguin.
right. It does
Okay.
sound a little bit like Little Penguin. It does in that case.
Okay.
So in fact, Roblox is a UGC platform. The
Uh-huh.
content are games. So in fact, the
Uh-huh.
same way Twitch has a creator community of a million people creating content for Twitch,
Yeah.
Roblox has hundreds of thousands of creators.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now what they create are games for this environment. Okay.
Mhm.
And different games become popular for a period of time, and then they go away, and another game becomes popular, and another game becomes popular. Okay. Um,
Mhm.
but for 8 to 13-year-olds, the statistic used to be, and I suspect it's higher now, over 50% of 18 to 13-year-olds use Roblox regularly.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Big
Over
time.
50%.
Just not Fortnite anymore.
And it is aging up because Over 50% of the Roblox users are over 13 now. In other words, it
Mhm.
started where it was mostly just 8 to 13. But now as they age, they're still doing stuff because over 50% are over 13. Okay?
Wow.
And so but the thing about Roblox is it's kind of like Twitch. Because the reason with Twitch, you come to just hang out.
Mhm.
You can start it at any time, you can stop it at any time, you can stop doing it at any time.
Mhm.
Okay? If you're playing a game, like especially the games popular on Twitch, once you start the game, you're committed for 25 minutes. Like you can't be distracted. You can't look at your
Mhm.
phone. You're in Fortnite, right?
Right.
Um, and it's kind of like watching an episode of Game of Thrones. Once you start an
Mhm.
episode of Game of Thrones, you're committed to that narrative arc.
Mhm.
Okay. On Twitch, you can turn it on at any time. You can watch it. You can lean forward. You can lean back. You can do other shit. Roblox is the same way. You can start it at any time. You can
Mhm.
stop at any time. You're just hanging out, much
Yeah.
like you do on Twitch, and you can lean forward and then lean back.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thought is there's something about this idea of Alveus, and they have video and other things that in fact there may be I don't know what the good idea is because I haven't played Roblox.
Mhm.
I have a good friend
I
that
I
was
am playing on I'm playing at the end of the month for a there's a contract for it.
uh,
So we'll see. I don't know. I've never played it before, but that would be really interesting.
I
I
have
don't know. I've never
a
thought
really
about
good
it.
friend of mine used to run basically all of the side. Basically, there was their engineering side and then everything else, and he
Uh-huh.
ran everything else. And now he's left and he's enjoying his retirement because Roblox has done very well.
Mhm.
But if ever it's interesting, I could ping him about because there's something about as you think about Alveus and reaching in the digital, like there may be something interesting about connecting, like exposing, exposing them in a manner that's not really all that different from Twitch.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Um, I haven't really thought about ways to connect to other demographics. Besides, I did write a children's book, or I am writing one. I've submitted the first draft of the manuscript, but that's aimed at really young kids.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know if that's something that would grow, but otherwise, I haven't really considered reaching other demographics. But it's definitely worth considering. Um,
yeah,
I think it's really neat.
yeah, yeah. I'll keep thinking about it. In fact, next time I see him, I'll ask him because part of it is and I bet you he'll have an idea because he did all their business
Mhm.
development stuff and
I'll become a
all sorts of
Roblox
crazy
streamer.
stuff. All sorts of crazy stuff goes on there because people create stores and it's like it's a whole world that I don't fully understand. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
All right. So now let's go. Let's go to music. Okay. And let's
Music.
start with what music do you like?
That's a
Who
good
is your
question.
do you use Spotify?
I do.
Okay. Well, what's your
Who's my
Spotify?
top artist?
Bring up your Spotify Wrapped.
My Spotify Wrapped. Um,
And it may be
let's
you're
see.
embarrassed by, oh no, I can't talk about
You're
that.
Wrapped. No, I'm not. Um, I played 1,897 songs in 2023. My top songs were. Oh, oh, that's just a playlist. Hold on. I listened to 1.3K artists this year.
Wow, that's a lot.
Uh, Noah Kahn was my number one artist.
That was quite good.
Um, Number two was copyright free lo-fi because I play
Oh,
that
they
for
are
stream.
so good. They are so good.
I play that for stream.
So I don't, is
Number
there an artist
three,
there? Is there an artist on Spotify
no,
called Copyright Free Lo-Fi?
yes, yes,
Oh
yeah,
wow. I need to check out that
that's
artist.
funny. Number three was Zach Bryan, so it's country. Number four is Tyler Childers, also country. Number five was the Paper Kites, which I guess is more like
Oh.
indie alternative.
Well, in that case, Maya, we actually have a lot in common.
Really?
Okay. Oh yeah. So now I'll go to my Wrapped.
Okay.
Okay. And then I need to go to the Wrapped, which is under here. Where the hell? If it doesn't appear, how do I find it?
I just went on my homepage and it was in one of my playlist
Yeah,
suggestions.
yeah. Since I have used it so much, it is it is. Let me
Or if you
just
go
search
and
for Wrapped.
search, it might be
Yeah, I'm
in.
gonna search for Wrapped. Let's see if it should come up when I search for Wrapped. Let's just see. There we go. Your 23 Wrapped. Here we your songs. Because I want to get this specific. Oh, there it was. It was there. I missed it. The Wrapped game. Your Wrapped. Here we go. Your top song. There we go. Whoop. All right. So I'll go through. My Wrapped was 2,521 songs.
Wow.
Okay. And you listened to 913 artists. Okay. And my number one was Zach Bryan.
Oh.
My number two was Gregory Alan Isakov. Do you know who he
Uh-huh.
is?
I don't.
You should. You'd love him. Number three was Tyler Childers.
Gregory. Oh my gosh, no way. How
And by the way,
funny.
everyone on my stream knows this because I play. In fact, uh I did a Zach Bryan only stream where I played for 3.5 hours where I only did cover of Zach Bryan songs.
Oh my gosh, that's
It
awesome.
was
All of
after
his
I
songs are so good.
yeah.
I listen to him all the time.
Yeah. So in fact, let's see. I'm going. I was in the 0.5% of Zach Bryan fans,
Wow.
and it had the number of minutes listened was like 8,000 something
Uh-huh.
of listening to Zach Bryan, and
Jeez.
everyone on my stream knows, and so they always request and Tyler Childers, and
Yeah. How
and
funny.
yeah, yeah. And in fact, I saw him. I went to see him in Austin at
Hmm.
he was there for Two Step in April,
Oh,
which was a concert also with Tyler Childers.
really? I've never
Yes.
seen either of them. I would love to though,
Yes, it was an
obviously.
outdoor concert up like in the Georgetown area,
Hmm.
and it was a festival. And Zach was the headline one day, and Tyler was the headline the other day.
Wow, that's the
And
dream.
yeah, and
That's cool.
I'm going to and I've seen him two other times, and I'm also going up to see him in Minnesota when he plays with Turnpike Troubadours, which is another
Cool.
group you should listen to.
Yeah, I've have Gregory Alan Isakov in my Spotify now to listen to after.
Okay. Now, well, I will text you this next one because
Okay.
I was obsessed with Zach, and now obsessed with a new artist.
Okay.
Okay. And he doesn't have nearly the catalog as Zach, but his name is Jeffrey Martin,
Okay.
and I'll text you his name. So,
Great.
in fact, I just saw him live, and he was wonderful. And he's a lot like Gregory Alan Isakov. So Gregory Alan Isakov is he is a poet extraordinaire,
Mhm.
and he's one of these artists that he lives in Colorado, and he's actually now got a pretty big following.
Mhm.
But it's like you listen to his songs and you really like it, and then you look at the lyrics and it's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, right? The lyrics just
Mhm.
keep. And so Jeffrey Martin, his new album is "Thank God We Left the Garden" is the name of it,
Okay.
and all the songs, because the concept of "Thank God We Left the Garden" is around that actually the Garden of Eden was an illusion
Mhm.
because in fact, it's in biting the apple where the veil was lifted from our eyes and we saw
Mhm.
daylight. Because in
Mhm.
fact, there is
Oh.
no happiness without sorrow. There is no
Mhm.
joy without pain. There is no
Mhm.
that in fact life is about the joy and the suffering and everything, right?
Wow.
And that's what life's about. He has, let me see, where's my tablet? One of his songs, and so all the songs weave into that sort of the sorrow and joy of life. And I'm going to read one of his lyrics just because I like him
Cool.
so much. Hold on. Cancel. Let me bring it up. Tabs, artists, EFGHIJ, Jeffrey Martin. All right. So he has one song that because as he introduces, he talks about like this whole idea where we grow up with certain attitudes that are wrong and how we're influenced by the people around us. And
Mm-hmm.
he has this story where he's talking about a friend who was his good friend that he was gay, his friend. Okay. And the
Mm-hmm.
life that his friend had to experience, and he's feeling bad about how he wasn't there for his friend. But then he talked about the church and how hard the church was on the friend. And one of the phrases I just love, okay, is he goes, yeah, he ends it with the phrase about God and saying, like he gave you a heart, but he did not give you a place. Did he breathe into you just to tell you that you are to blame?
Oh,
Right?
geez.
And this idea that God breathed into someone that's gay just to like in how like problematic church is, okay?
Yeah,
And it, like just anyway, his he has so many songs that are like that on this album. So,
that's powerful stuff. Man, I'm
yeah,
excited to listen to that.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
That's Jeffrey Martin.
Jeffrey Martin,
Cool.
and find he does his lyrics aren't on Spotify, so look on Genius because it's
Oh.
one of those artists that you'll get it when you're listening to him, but then you'll read the words
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be like,
And
oh
get
my
it
gosh, I
much
missed
more.
that. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
missed that. Right?
Cool. Love
Yeah.
that.
So I have like three other artists to recommend to you too, given that you like
Yeah.
them. Emily Scott Robinson is another one that you will love.
Don't know her.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I'm a music
I
music geek.
know. I know.
Yeah,
I love that. That's great.
yeah.
That's
I
awesome
had
because I need
I,
more
I had
music.
1,000 albums back when people bought albums, and then I had 1,000
Oh my
CDs,
gosh.
and
Wow.
then now, of course, I use the music streaming services. So, but I listen to music all the time and go see it all the time. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
I will I will remember that next time because I suspect you don't go see music much in Austin.
No, I don't. I see occasionally very, very small live music at very, very small venues, but not festivals or concerts or anything. No.
Yeah, and even at the small venues, part of that I realized was down there IRL streaming with Emily that
Hmm.
part of that is just being it's that like Austin is actually like a ways away
Hmm.
in terms of where
Yeah.
all the music is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, they're all parts of Austin. It's like, oh, I didn't know this exists. I didn't know, this exists. And so
Texas
I
is
will,
just is huge overall. It takes forever to get anywhere because it's just such a
yeah.
huge state. But yeah.
So I'm going to be down there. I'm probably going to live there for the second half of March and the first half of April. I'm going to go down for
Oh,
South by Southwest and then stay for a month.
cool.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, so
Okay.
I'll
Sweet.
drag you out to go see some music. I'll say,
I would love
okay,
to.
one night I'll see what's going on at one of the small clubs because there's so
Yeah.
many that if you just don't know them,
Yeah.
James,
I do.
there,
I love it. I do love live music. I'm
yeah.
overwhelmed by festivals, but I love live music.
No, I like small. So the two artists that I
Hmm.
will take you to go see, and I'll send you is Bob Schneider. Do you know who he is?
Hmm. No.
Okay, so he's an Austin like mainstay, and
Oh, okay.
and yeah, he's like he's an Austin singer-songwriter that's been going on for 20 years now. And then
Hmm.
another one is James McMurtry, who also he plays every Tuesday night at the Continental Club, and
Okay.
Bob plays every Monday night at Saxon Pub, and these are small clubs
Yeah.
that they play at, and they're just them
Great.
and their guitar and a small band. So
That sounds perfect.
yeah, yeah.
Love that.
All right, let's see. We've gotten through a lot of topics.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if there are other ones I did not touch. So I know. Um, so you talked about this a little bit, right? But talk a little more about your community, right? And how you know how your community engages with you. Give people a sense for that, because of course the huge part about Twitch is the magic of the community. So talk to me how you think about your community, how you nurture your community? What do you do to kind of build that community?
Yeah. It's evolved a lot. You know, it's ebbed and flowed. There have been a lot of people that have been there since 2019,
Hmm.
and a lot of people that are brand new. The great thing about my community is so many of them are super supportive of Alveus. I think in the past year, especially, I've had a huge transition from doing normal just chatting stuff that I think they came from on Twitch, to doing conservation education and being with the animals all the time, and they stuck around. And so I'm super grateful for that group of people for sure. Um, but I think they're as invested in animals as they are in me, which is, I think they feel like they know the animals very, very well, and they feel really connected to those animals. Really cool. And also, I think it's a big uniting thing for myself and Alveus as a community and Alveus as a nonprofit in person, is like we are all very aligned in what we care about and what we're interested in seeing grow, uh, and seeing excel. And so, yeah, it's been really great. I'm more happy with where my community is now than I ever have been in my career on Twitch.
And now, do you how much is your do you get a sense for are there portions of your community that have discovered you but don't use the rest of Twitch all that much? Meaning, how much, let's take, for example, do you have any sense for that in terms of like, let's just talk about the gaming part of Twitch, right? Obviously, what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing is
Mm-hmm.
relatable to all sorts of people, and many of them are not gamers. Do you have a sense of the degree to which you've been able to get people that engage with you, but they don't necessarily spend all their time on the rest of Twitch? Do you have any sense of that?
I think it's a very small
Yeah,
percentage. I certainly have some people that come in and they're like, I saw these YouTube videos, or like, I never watched Twitch, but it's cool to see your stream. But it is like handfuls, like very,
that's my
very
sense.
small percentage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My sense is always that uh, as you talk about non-gaming, non-traditional, I use that's the term I want to use now, is like non-traditional Twitch content, which is a euphemism for non-gaming, but
Mm-hmm.
non-traditional Twitch content, which actually is a huge part of Twitch. um, uh, that I think it is tough for somebody for someone to build a habit of going to Twitch all the time and just watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Because to learn Twitch, to get Twitch, to like, you just have to keep showing up. And you
Mm-hmm.
might find your stream that they like, but
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't give them something to watch every day for
Right.
5 hours a day. And the
Yeah.
question is, do they have something to watch and whenever they're free? Because you're only on certain times and they have to plan around it. And it's like, no, the whole point is you're just hanging out. And so I've always said that for non-traditional stuff, people often talk about non-gamers. And I'm like, it's really tough to keep a non-gamer on Twitch. But there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of gamers that are interested in all sorts of stuff besides gaming,
Yeah. Yeah, I
right?
think that's fair. I think a ton of my community are gamers. Like if I'm ever playing a game on stream, my chat definitely knows
They love
miles
it.
more about that game than I do. Yeah, because they're all gamers, or they're
Yeah.
all on the computer all the time. Um, I think that there are a lot of people that may have started as gamers that now watch only non-traditional content because
Yes.
there's so
Yes.
much of it all the time. A lot of overlap with a lot of our communities. I have a huge overlap with NMP, Nick and Melena's community,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
because they're live, almost every day in the morning, and then I go live in the late morning, early afternoon. um,
Oh,
I think people, you know move
right.
along
Right.
through non-traditional
Yeah.
streaming content. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. We'll wrap up, but actually, Maya, because I am going to keep streaming, and you can put me on the background because I'm going to do 4 or 5 Jeffrey Martin songs.
Oh, love that. Cool.
Okay.
Okay, I will
Or, I
watch.
mean, if
Yeah,
you
that's
want to, I
awesome.
can do them while you're hanging out, or you can get
Oh, I'll
on with
watch them.
like,
It's okay. You can have
do
your
you want,
moment.
do you want to hang out
I'll
while
be
I'm
in
doing it,
chat.
the first few, or do you
Sure.
want to? All right. And then we'll hang out for 1 or 2, and I'll tell you about them and then maybe you'll say, okay, I'll wander off, and whoop, I know I moved the microphone. I'm switching to a different mic. You should keep chatting to keep it interesting for everyone.
Oh, as a streamer, I'm a streamer. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lack of dead air in this stream. I am the audience tonight in addition to all of you, but you will only see me. So I will be clapping for everybody tonight. Hold on. I don't even have a chat. let me open a chat. Hold on. Djclancy. Hello. A chat? Hello. I see you all. Hi. Hi, Betty. Hi, Josh. Hi, Marie. Hi, Anonymous. Hi, Adonis. Hi, Corbin.
All right, do y'all hear me now?
Yes.
And do you hear the piano?
Yes.
Okay, keep chatting because I need to get my iPad.
Okay. I can see chat now, so I'm going to keep chatting. Hey, Hammy. Hey, how's it going, guys? How we doing tonight? What'd you think of our little chat here? Did you have a good time? Have a good time so far? Who's this? I have a modded out. Wait, who's that? Hi, Rep. So, oh, you guys are typing really fast. He's such a super cool dude. He is. He's very, very nice. You and hippie Dr. K. Does he know that you call him that? That's funny. He is. He does remind me a little bit of Dr. K, actually. I don't know if you can hear me if he has wireless headphones.
I hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Is Dr.
Oh.
K the healthy? Is he the healthy gamer guy, or is that someone else?
Yes. Yeah, he does healthy
I'm going
gaming.
on his stream next week.
Oh, interesting. He's really, really pleasant to talk with. He's really good.
I think we'll have a lot to talk about because I've done a lot of reading about it's funny. I'm interested in a bunch of different things, and social psychology is one of them. And so I've done a lot of reading on that and about anxiety and depression and all that. And so and I ran into him at it was a party. Oh, was it one of these creator parties? It's some event in LA or somewhere else. And we started chatting, and I was talking about, and he was like, "Oh, wow, we need to talk on stream," because we had so much in common,
Well, he has a very niche, specific perspective in the line of work that he does, and that's definitely interesting.
Yep.
He does make everyone cry, though, so be ready.
Does he? I don't think he's going to make me cry.
Well, I didn't think he was going to make me cry either.
Really?
Best of luck. Yeah.
I don't think. I think so. It's not that I don't cry. In fact, actually, I'm like for a good movie, I'll like it can be the schlockiest movie, and I might cry at the movie. But outside of a schlocky, movie, it's I don't think it get me crying.
All right.
All right. So, and now I didn't warm up at all on my voice, so it's going to be, that's the thing about singing that I don't know if you kind of experience that, but for me, it's like I won't warm up, and then it's kind of okay, but I beat up my voice when I do that, and it's better if I do something so it goes slow, but.
Yeah. I usually count my talking during stream as warm up, which is not right and not the same.
Actually the case. I know. All right. Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks for being here, Maya. It was great.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Of fun.
Yeah, this was really nice.
Right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Then I'll see you in chat.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.